concerned because your smart child is not reading well? Well, it might be dyslexia. Hi, I'm Hunter Oswald. I'm a reading specialist and dyslexia specialist, and I'm here today to talk about what dyslexia is and what you should look out for if you're concerned your child might be having difficulty with reading. So let's dive in. Dyslexia is a learning disability that impacts reading, writing, and spelling words at the word level. Simply put, people with dyslexia cannot figure out the words. They have trouble with sounding them out. This can cause them to have difficulty comprehending what they read, but dyslexia is not a comprehension disability. If somebody reads a story out loud to them, they can comprehend it fine. It's just when they have to read it on their own that their inability to decode blocks their comprehension. Dyslexia is neurobiological in origin. It is caused by the way the brain is wired. This different brain wiring is discussed in depth in Dr. Sally Shaywitz's book, Overcoming Dyslexia, and that's where this graph comes from. It shows from fMRI imaging that the majority of people who do not have dyslexia are processing language with the left side of their brain. But individuals with dyslexia are only using a tiny bit of the left side of their brain, and they're over-relying on right brain reading mechanisms to try to read. However, it's very inefficient. Dyslexia is genetic. That means it runs in families. It's super important to know your family history. Of course, if someone in your family was diagnosed with dyslexia, then you would know to be on the lookout for it. But a lot of adults were never diagnosed as children. So we look out for things in their background that might indicate that they could have had undiagnosed dyslexia. Things like having repeated a grade in elementary school, not finishing school, even just disliking reading and being a poor speller as an adult could indicate that the grown-up had undiagnosed dyslexia. Dyslexia is unexpected. These are very smart children that everyone expects to do great in school. However, they hit a wall when it comes to learning to read. So it is typically pretty surprising when the child starts having academic issues because all other indicators are that the child is very capable. They might have a strong vocabulary, they might be very social, they might have interest and know a lot of facts about a particular area. There's no reason to think that this child is not capable or unintelligent, and that's what makes their difficulty learning to read so surprising and hard to understand. Something I really want you to know is the root cause of dyslexia. Dyslexia is caused by a weakness in what's called phonological processing. That's a fancy way of saying how the brain processes the individual sounds in words. It is not caused by a visual processing difficulty. Some people think dyslexia has to do with seeing things backwards, but that is not it. They are not seeing things any different than a typically developing child. However, they are having trouble processing the sounds. Let me give you an example. A typically developing first grader could take a word like brain, and without really having to think about it, in the back of their mind, they can break that word into sounds. B, r, a, n. The child with the phonological deficit either can't do that or it might be very difficult for them. They might process the sounds in brain as b, a, n, or maybe b, a, r, n, or maybe they're thinking brain. The last sound they thought of might come out first. Nab. That's an example of a difficulty with phonological processing, which typically causes dyslexia. So, what are some things you can look out for? Yes, you can start looking out for warning signs of dyslexia as young as preschool. A relative with dyslexia is always something that should catch your attention, or like we talked about, just with a history that might be consistent with dyslexia. Anything to do with speech language is going to be something that will impact their literacy in the future. So if a child had delayed speech, if they didn't have, if they weren't speaking any words by 12 months or 15 words by 18 months, or of course if they have any articulation difficulties, that could indicate that they are not processing sounds as clear, crisp, and unique as other children. Along with that goes persistent baby talk. It's really cute when they're little, but if they're still saying things like spaghetti instead of spaghetti once they hit school age, that could indicate that their sound processing is not where we would want it to be, and that will make it difficult for them to learn to spell and read. Any trouble with rhyming? So many preschool songs and books are sing-songy, rhymey, and if they're having trouble identifying the words that rhyme, that can show that their sound processing is impaired. They might have word retrieval difficulty. These are the kids that go, the whatchamacallit, the thingamajig, and difficulty memorizing. A lot of times what gets parents' attention is if a child's having difficulty memorizing the alphabet, but they might also have trouble remembering their address, their last name, their birthday, anything that's kind of rote, random memorization they might have difficulty with. Once they get into school, the warning signs are definitely connected to reading. They're going to be a slow reader. It'll be choppy. They'll be missing a lot of words. And since they're not doing well with sounding out, you're going to notice a lot of guessing based off the first letter, the shape of the word, the pictures on the page, or the context. All of those are huge red flags for dyslexia. They'll be a terrible speller. Most kids can learn the words for a spelling test on Friday, but they're not getting into their long-term memory. Messy handwriting is a warning sign. Dyslexia can impact math, so the way it does is they have trouble learning those math facts, especially when it's timed, and they, of course, are going to have difficulty reading the word problems. Because they are not really enjoying school, a lot of times these will be students that complain of headaches, stomach aches, anything to get them out of class. And unfortunately, they tend to have low self-esteem and just generally to not want to go to school. Once we get into those middle and high school grades, we have all the warning signs we've already talked about, plus a few additional. Difficulty learning a foreign language. If you're having trouble processing the sounds in your own native tongue, it's definitely going to be hard for you to master a foreign language. These are kids who avoid reading. They would prefer not to read for fun, and when they have to read for school, they're going to try to come up with any way to get out of it. Homework takes forever, and I would say really all schoolwork takes forever. Dyslexia robs you of time, and it makes, even if you can read some, it takes you a lot more time to read than your peers. And these are students who really cannot prove what they know on a standardized test or on paper pencil. So they're very smart, but they just do not test well. If you think your child might have these warning signs, there are 3 things that your child needs. First and foremost is identification. We need to figure out if your child really does have dyslexia. There are a couple ways you can go about this. So one is to seek private testing with an individual like myself, a reading specialist, or you could go to a psychologist or a licensed professional counselor. If you're in public school in the state of Alabama, your child would be entitled to a dyslexia screening. That's something that you could request. That's an informal way for the school to tell you if they notice some of the symptoms and characteristics of dyslexia in your child. Also, if you're in public school, you could request an initial evaluation for an individualized education plan or IEP. This initial evaluation will not diagnose your child with dyslexia, but is more formalized testing to see if those characteristics exist and if your child would be eligible for additional specialized help at school. If you're interested in getting your child help at a public school, I highly recommend this text, Dyslexia Advocate by Kelly Sandman Hurley. Well, now that we know your child has dyslexia, we want to get in there and fix up their weak areas. And for that, I recommend the dyslexia therapy approach using the Orton-Gillingham method. Orton-Gillingham is named after the individuals who created this approach to instruction, Dr. Orton and Anna Gillingham. Orton-Gillingham instruction is explicit, systematic, comprehensive, and multisensory. So it really goes in depth into the structure of the language and helps the kids learn and overlearn all the patterns in the English language to improve their reading and spelling. All of this is done through a multi-sensory approach because individuals with dyslexia really need to use all of their senses. They're not going to be great learners when you only give it to them using language, lectures, worksheets. They're not going to learn great that way. They really need to use all their senses. So anything that they can hear auditorily, they can see visual patterns, and of course anything tactile or kinesthetic is going to be very helpful for them. The great news is, and again, this is from Sally Shaywitz's book, Overcoming Dyslexia, with the right kind of help, the dyslexics can rewire their brain and become left brain readers. So that's very encouraging. The last thing that dyslexic students need are accommodations. So accommodations are things they can get in school that are not going to change what is learned, but how it is learned. It won't change what is tested, but how it is tested. And this is going to help them keep up with their grade level curriculum while they are improving their basic reading and spelling skills through dyslexia therapy. A few notes on accommodations. The gift of time. Dyslexia robs you of time. It makes everything take twice as long. So people with dyslexia need additional time, or they need shortened assignments so they can do it in the amount of time that other kids can do it. Kids with dyslexia need to embrace technology. There's so much available these days that can help them overcome their deficits. Audiobooks, voice typing, spell check, and individuals with dyslexia need to embrace all of this to help them overcome their learning issues. And lastly, they need a chance to play to their strengths. This can apply in a lot of ways. For one, just keeping them involved in extracurriculars that they're passionate about and that come naturally to them, be it sports, performing arts, visual arts, whatever they are interested in and good at. But also it can apply in an academic setting. So instead of making kids learn only through reading, let them learn through doing a research project, a presentation, an experiment. Let them show their knowledge in different ways besides just writing a paper, ways that better play to their strengths. Again, lectures and worksheets are not going to be the best method for individuals with dyslexia. They need hands-on, interactive, to learn and to show what they know. A great text to find out more about this is the Dyslexia Empowerment Plan by Ben Foss. Most important, individuals with dyslexia need perseverance, empathy, and understanding from the adults that work with them. Their parents, their teachers, their tutors, everyone has to model for them working hard and not giving up. We have to show them empathy and understanding. And as we really understand what it is they are dealing with and facing, that's where true empathy comes from. Thanks for tuning in today. If you have any other questions, check out our website or other videos on YouTube.